Hey, good morning. Welcome to Thrive LA again. And it's good to see you guys. I'm really happy to see you. My name is Andrew, and if you're a guest with us, I want to extend a special welcome. We're excited to start our new series today, Friends That Benefit, about building relationships worth having, being the type of friend we've always wanted. And each week, one of our values is that everyone here has a story to tell, and we want to tell God's story and the God stories in our lives. And so each week we want to celebrate a story of friendship that we really feel like is a picture of what God is doing in the world. So I want to invite a friend of mine up right now, Faith Hughes. Faith, if you would come up. And I've asked Faith just to share a little bit, and I asked her to share a story of a friend that pursued her. Faith is new to the area, just moved in to town yesterday. But Faith is a longtime friend of mine, and so anyway, Faith is super excited to be involved here and is going to be sharing a little bit later about some of the events and socializing opportunities we have as a church. But I'll let her kind of just introduce herself and share a little bit.
Yeah, I'm Faith. Is this on? No.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, just kidding. Okay. So one friend that I have seen that has really pursued me and taught me a lot about friendship is a friend named Liz. And I met her in Chicago when I moved there, and then I moved into a new neighborhood, kind of to do missions work. And so she was actually my roommate, and that's how we met each other. She pursued me in so many ways. I had never realized that I hadn't had friends that had done that before. So she invited me in. She invited me into her home, into her friendships, into her community, into her service opportunities. Like everything she did, like I knew that I was welcome there. And she didn't just love me for part of me, like she loved and pursued every single part of me. So she pursued me in my sin, and she pursued me in accountability, and in the really fun times, and in the late night conversations over tea before we went to bed. She just shared like every part of herself without holding back anything or without any boundaries. And she just taught me so much through doing that. She taught me just about selflessness. When we pursue people and when we pursue friends, like that takes so much selflessness, and I didn't always reciprocate that to her. So there were times where I was a really selfish friend, or where I would go my own way and I would kind of abandon her there. But she never quit and she never faltered. So she gave me a lot of grace and she had patience for me, and I think that's like so much of what it means to pursue friends in our lives.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you sharing that. We all need friends like Liz, friends who pursue us. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about friends and how they pursue and the value of pursuit. But I thought, since we're talking about how in good friendships and good relationships people pursue us, I thought we should start by talking about when we know we've gone too far. So we've all had a friend who just didn't know when to stop, who didn't know when to quit, right? And or maybe you've had a guy or a girl who just like wouldn't stop texting you or something. And so I thought, just to make sure we understand what kind of pursuit we're talking about, I just want to start for a couple minutes with a few texts from my ex, just to make sure that none of you guys think this is what we're talking about today, okay? So you might have over-pursued a friendship if they don't return your calls, okay? Now, I know many of us here are millennials. We don't answer the phone. So you're thinking, that's not evidence of anything. I don't answer anybody's calls. Okay, but they also, if they don't respond your texts, you also might be over-pursuing. If you want to show the next slide. If you have to send this many, over that many months, over-pursuing, okay? Their phone's not broken. Maybe the first time, maybe the second time. I don't get cell service in my apartment. I sympathize not that many times, okay? But you know what? Sometimes people, they want to let you down gently, and so sometimes they give excuses, right? But if they give too many crazy excuses, you might give up the pursuit. So, I don't have a car, and my dog died. One of those would have done. Maybe we take the hint. But then sometimes people stop trying. I want to spend tonight with you. I'm sorry, I gotta be with my cat. Can I tell you guys a story? When I was in high school, I was a senior in high school, and a couple of buddies of mine, we asked my friend, hey, what are you doing tonight? We really want to go hang out. He said, I can't, I'm watching my cat. Now, I'm not a cat lover, I don't own a cat. Do cats need to be watched? I don't think that was a real excuse. I don't know what, to this day, I was in his wedding. I still, to this day, I don't know what was so important that he had to lie to me and tell me he had to watch his cat. If that happens to you, you might be over pursuing. All right, but then just finally, my final recommendation is just don't let it get weird. Okay? Just don't let it get weird. If you're sending texts like this, you're over pursuing. But you know what though? Maybe you've had a friend where you feel like they're always reaching out and they never reach back. How does that feel? In a dating relationship, it feels all kinds of things, right? But even just in a friendship, sometimes you just want to know that they care. You reach out, you send them a text, you just kind of hope, like, did they read it? Did it, were they thinking of me? And you know what, it's fine. Sometimes we get a little crazy and it's like somebody was in a movie and we can wait 2 hours. Sometimes we're so used to things like my websites load in 2 seconds and so everybody should respond to me immediately at all times. But there's a part of human nature, there's a part of who we are as people, our desire for relationships, that we want people to want to be with us, right? We want people to want to be with us even when we don't initiate. We want them to text us even when we don't text them first. We want them to call us even when we don't call them first. We want them to wave even if we didn't wave first. We want people to pursue us, to come after us. And sometimes in the hardest moments in our life, in the lowest points of our life, in the places and the times where we're putting up the biggest walls, those are the times when we want our friends to come peek over the wall and say, hey, what are you doing over there, neighbor? Let's hang out. Let's go do something. When you're going through a terrible mess, you're going through a breakup, you want somebody to watch Netflix and eat ice cream with you, right? When you had a really, really long day at work, you just want to be able to laugh or zone out or be with somebody. Sometimes we want to be alone, we want space, but we just want to know that people care. Sometimes you want to text somebody what's wrong and you don't want them to say anything, you just want them to know. But we care about people, we want people in our lives. And the church, this place, is actually God's design. It's God's intended gift for the world, to be a place where these kinds of relationships flourish. And so today we're starting this new series on Friends That Benefit, and we're going to be talking about the idea of pursuit. But we have to step one level up first. So we have to start, and we got to back up a step. And we got to talk about how God has designed the church to be a vehicle for his extended family, for his relationships, but also how you are his church. And so you are the extension of God's love in the world. If you have a Bible, you can flip there or just listen. Ephesians 2:19 says this. If you pull it up, it says, so then you, talking to the church, to the people of the church, you are no longer strangers and aliens, but you are fellow citizens and members of, citizens with the saints and members of the household of God. That word household there, it's the Greek word. The Bible, the New Testament, was originally written in Greek. It's the Greek word oikos, and it means a household, but it means more than just your immediate family. It's all of the people that you do and share life with. In those days, they lived in kind of sometimes these bigger places where you would have all the people who kind of worked and lived together. You'd have members of this greater household that you would share life with. And what God says is that when you join the church, you join God's extended family. You join God's social network, and God is his father, Jesus is his brother, and you are deeply loved. We talked about this in our series in Ephesians. And so that's why our mission at Thrive LA is to invite our neighbors to belong, contribute, and thrive in the family of God. We believe people are invited into a family. And so Jesus is that great friend, that perfect older brother who loves us and sets the way for us and cares for us, invites us in, calls us. The church is God's extended family. But here's the deal. Because the church is family, because the church includes others and loves others, even as my poor son right now I think is crying in the nursery. As we care for our family, we also have concern for the extended family, for the family of God around us. And so Mark says this way, right after Jesus has done a great work in somebody's life, here's what he tells them. He says, go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you. and how he has had mercy on you. And that phrase there, your friends, is that same Greek word, your oikos. Go to your extended family. Go to your neighbors, go to your friends, go to your family, and show them the type of love that God has shown you. And so you've been welcomed into a family, you've been invited, you've been served, you've been cared for, you've been totally built up in God's family. And so the extension of God's love in the world is that you now go do for others what Jesus has done for you. You go welcome, you go pursue, you go serve, you go share. And so the whole idea of these next 11 weeks, this series, Friends That Benefit, is that we are going to take responsibility to be the type of friend to the people in our household, our extended family, our social network, to be the friend to those people that Jesus would be to them. To say, I'm going to love you like Jesus has loved me. I'm going to serve you like Jesus has served me. We're going to take responsibility for our oikos, for our social network. This extended family is the people you do life with and interact with regularly. It's your social network. It's online, it's in real life. It's Christians and it's non-Christians. It's family, it's friends, it's coworkers, it's neighbors, it's people you like, it's people you don't like. It's people who like you, it's people who don't like you. It's the people who influence you, it's the people who you have influence on. It's the people that you rub shoulders with. So think now. Think of your life. Where do you go? What do you do? You live somewhere in a neighborhood. You have neighbors, people you wave to at the mailbox, maybe, or you avoid eye contact with at the mailbox. You have a favorite coffee shop, and the barista knows your name, but you don't know theirs. And they know your order. And so then you feel like you have to tip, because that's a good thing. You go to work somewhere, or you work from home, you have clients, who you exchange emails with, phone calls with, texts with, bump into in the hallway. You've got a family. You've got some family members that call you, and you hit ignore. You've got family members that you call when you're really in need and you need them to pick up right now. You've got friends that you're going through some drama with. You got some friends that you're talking to about that drama. We all have a world around us, and it's unique for each person. It's different for every one of us. And God has this master plan to love every person in the world. And guess what? That plan is you. Because I'm not at your work. I don't live in your family. And the person next to you, they may be a coworker, they may be a family member, but even still, their circle, it may overlap yours, but they have a unique place in the world. And every single one of you has been uniquely positioned by God to be the one friend that the people in your life need. And you, maybe whether you like it or not, whether you believe it or not, you actually are a picture of God and of Jesus to those people. You represent something holy and special and divine. As an image bearer of God, you carry with you the majesty, the DNA, the picture of God in the world. And so constantly all of us are forming our opinions about the world we live in and about if there's a God, and those opinions are formed by the people we interact with. And you are God's ambassador. You are God's servant. You are God's family member in the world. And you have a special opportunity to be the type of friend to those people that Jesus would be. So in this series, we're going to identify some friends, and we're going to be intentional about taking responsibility to be a friend. Maybe you came today hoping that you would come and that I would tell you, here's how we're going to get people to be your friend. And I guess if we all do that, it might work out. But we're going to try to take responsibility and say, how can I be a friend like Jesus would be a friend? How can I have compassion and love? And so today we start with the idea of pursuit. That we have to go after them. Not like a high-speed chase, like I'm going to pull you over and put some handcuffs on you and give you a ticket. Not like I'm going to chase a bad guy and try to take him down. But rather, in love and humility and friendship, to say, hey, I want to be in your life. I want to be a friend to you. We're going to talk about this idea of pursuit. And there's 3 parts to this, 3 ways that we pursue. And here's the first one. You have to identify who God has put in your life. You have to identify who God has put in your life. I want to read what may be a new story for some of you or a familiar story for others. It's in the Bible in the book of Luke, chapter 10. It is famously known as the story of the Good Samaritan. Luke chapter 10, verse 23. Turning to his disciples, Jesus said privately, "Blessed are the eyes that see what you see. For I tell you that many prophets and kings desired to see what you see and did not see it, and to hear what you hear and did not hear it." So he turns to his people, to the church, to the followers of God. And he said, in seeing Jesus, you've seen something amazing. You've beheld something wonderful. And other people have wanted to see it. You've experienced something with God. It's been meaningful to you. And then it says, and behold, a lawyer stood up to put him to the test, saying, "Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life?" He said to him, "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" And he answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." And he said to him, "You answered correctly. Do this and you will live." So this guy's trying to test Jesus. He said, hey, what's this whole Christianity thing about? Jesus says, it's pretty simple. Love God and love the people around you. And the guy trying to prove himself, verse 29 says, okay, but who's my neighbor? Who am I supposed to love? You tell me to go love my neighbor. And Jesus replies with a story. Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among the robbers, who stripped him and beat him and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side." So a priest is somebody who serves in the temple of God and the family of God to stand between God and people. The job of a priest was to show God to people. Remember I said that you show God to the people in your life, even whether you like it or not? The job of a priest in the community of the family of God, his role was to be the chief person to say, hey, let me show God to you. Let me bring you into the presence of God. And so when somebody was hurt and stuck on the side of the road, the priest is going by and he sees him and he goes, nah, nope, and he keeps walking. And then it says, and also there was a Levite, and a Levite was a part of the same leadership in the community of God. And so here's this other person who is taking responsibility to make sure people could see and know God. And he sees the person in need and he goes, nope, and he keeps walking by. But a Samaritan, now no, these were enemies in some ways of the people of God. There was religious differences, there was racial divisions between them. A Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. He saw him, he had compassion. He went to him and bound up his wounds, poured on oil and wine. Then he set him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, "Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay you when I come back." And then Jesus asked, which of these 3 do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among the robbers? He said, the one who showed him mercy. Jesus said, you go and do likewise. Now there's a lot in this story. It's a famous story. There's so much that can be said. I just want to point out one thing that I don't want you to miss. all three of these people had the injured, hurting man in their life. All three of them interacted with him in a real and meaningful way. All three of them saw him with their eyes. Two of those people would have said, I have known and seen God. And yet they did not see the person right in front of them in need. And one person who wouldn't have claimed to know the God of the Scriptures, who wouldn't have claimed to believe that the Bible is true, saw the hurting person. And Jesus says, which one of those do you think was actually a neighbor? What I want to propose, right? The scripture began saying that in the church we get to see things that people long to see. What I want to propose, what Jesus is talking about, is the only way that people can see God is if you first see them. The way people can begin to see God's love, experience His mercy and compassion and kindness, is if we, the people of God, stop, slow down, look around, and see the people around us. See them for who they are, where they are, their dreams, their hopes, their needs, their hurts. We need to stop and see people. And so the first step that I want to call us to in building friendships the way that God builds friendships and the way Jesus builds friendships is to identify the people in our lives, to just stop and be intentional about seeing them. And later on, I'm going to ask you actually to write down some names of some people in your life. To write down some names and just to stop and go, you know what? My sister, I want to see her. And that coworker, that was the one I like and the one I don't like. I'm going to write their names down. I'm going to stop. I'm going to be intentional. I'm going to identify them. And not to say they're going to be my project. I'm going to go try to change them. But man, I just want to, on purpose, decide I'm going to be their friend. I'm going to be there for them. And perhaps over these next 10, 11 weeks, that each week when we talk about forgiveness, that I'm going to look down at their names and say, man, is there anything I need to forgive? And when we talk about being open and honest, to say, hey, am I being real with these people? And to look at the names and identify the people in my life and to say, hey, am I including them and being hospitable to them? And just to take the next 10 weeks and to say, I'm going to identify a list of friends, maybe 8 to 10 friends, that I'm going to put all this to work in these relationships. And not to say it's like, okay, I'm going to be mean to everyone else. But to say, I'm just going to be on purpose. For this season of my life, I'm going to go all in on being the greatest friend that I can be to these people. I'm going to identify the people in my life. I'm going to see them, and I'm going to see who they are and what they need, and I'm going to be there for them. I'm going to step into their life. I'm going to identify them, and then I'm going to do something about it. God has put the people in your life on purpose. And you are uniquely situated to be in their life, to be a force for good and encouragement and hope. Which brings us to the second point. So we identify who God has placed in your life, but then we initiate deeper friendship in the Spirit of Christ. So in the way, and this is kind of what we've been talking about, and this is sort of a summary of what we're going to be talking about all series, but we take the responsibility to say, I'm going to initiate the type of friendship that Jesus would have with you. I want to focus on the word initiate. It means to start, to cause something to begin, to commence. Tell me, what happens in a friendship when you always have to text first? Eventually, it just stops, right? Eventually it runs out. If you're always the one initiating, if you're always the one reaching out. But you know what? But somebody's got to get the ball rolling. Somebody's got to be the one to step first. I think about this, skydiving. I'm a little bit afraid of heights. So skydiving is like probably not a good situation for me. But if I get up into a plane and we're gonna go skydiving, I kind of want to see the instructor go first. You know, like I don't want to be like asking the instructor. So what do I do when I'm in the air? Like I want to be with a skydiving instructor who's like, hey, let me show you the ropes. I know what to do. Here's what I want them to be initiating things. You know what I'm saying? Like I want to feel like this person taking me on this skydiving adventure is taking the first steps. Sometimes it's appropriate for somebody to go first. Jesus initiated with us. Think about this. In John chapter 1, it says, in the beginning was the Word. Jesus came before everything. And it says in verse 14, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we have seen his glory. Glory is of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. It says, we have seen Jesus because he came to us. God was in heaven, and he came on and he took on human flesh. He became a human being, and he experienced what life was like for us. He came into our world. From far away, he came near. And because of that, we say no one has ever seen God, the only God, who is at the Father's side until now. Jesus has made him known. When Jesus came to earth, we got to go, oh, I understand now. I get to see now because he came near to me. That's what Jesus did for us. Jesus came close before we asked him to do it. He took the first step. And he came close when we didn't deserve it. Romans 5. It says, for while we were still weak, at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly. For one will scarcely die for a righteous person, though perhaps for a good person one would dare even to die. But God shows his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. True friendship, it comes near, even at a cost. And Jesus, knowing that we live in rebellion and that we choose all kinds of things that are different from his design, made the first move and he said, I'm going to lay down my life for you. Jesus says in John, there's no greater love than this, than to lay down one's life for one's friends. And so Jesus came and he made the first move. He entered our world. He died for our sins. He said, I love you even if you don't love me back. I'll be faithful even if you're faithless. He came to us. And that's the spirit of friendship that we want to have, that we initiate kindness even when we're not sure what the other person will say. That we initiate friendship even when it's hard. That we're there for people even when we're not totally convinced that they would be there for us. Now, of course, we need people to pursue us and to be there for us, right? We can't always be giving and we'll eventually be empty. But in the church of God, if we were to say, I'm going to let Jesus fill me up, I'm going to let Jesus pursue me, and we were all then with that energy and with that power from God to look out and say, hey, how can I be a friend? I'm going to look for my neighbors and I'm going to be a neighbor to them. Everybody's needs in life would begin to be dealt with and built up. People could be encouraged and find hope. So we identify who's in my life. We say, I'm going to initiate friendship. I want to make one final point, and it's going to be really short. Here's the best way you can initiate friendship, and it's not going to be what you think. You're going to be like, all right, should I write them a card? Do I have to figure out a friend date? Do I have to find the right concert for us to go hang out at? You're like, what does this look like? I'm bad at this, maybe. You're making this awkward. Can't we just pretend like, we all have just the right amount of friends? Here's where you should start. Pray. So I told you, identify a list of people. And here's the way you can initiate a deeper, more meaningful relationship with them. Commit every day to pray for them. So write down your list of names. Say, okay, I'm thinking about my aunt and my coworker and my neighbor and my dog sitter and whatever. And to say, you know what, I know some of them I could just give a call this week, or we could go grab coffee, or I could invite them along when I go shopping this week. And you may know exactly what you want to do, but But before any of that, just say, every day I can pray for them. And here's what'll happen. A couple things will happen. One, your heart towards them will change. So there may be some people in your life that you have frustrations with or bitterness towards, or maybe you have doubts or worries that relationship's not in a good spot, and you don't know if it would be received or if you even want that. And what'll happen is when you begin to pray for somebody, God will begin to change your heart. You'll begin to grow your love for them. As you're praying, I guess you could pray, like if you started praying that they would die and suffer and get sick, maybe that would just make your heart more angry. But I assume that when you start praying, you're going to try to pray things like, God, I really just hope that Katie has a good day today and that she feels encouraged and loved. Or you start saying a prayer like, God, would you just fulfill all of Seth's dreams today? Would you just help him to accomplish the things he sets out to do today and to feel glad in his work? Or you might pray and you say, God, I know that Faith is moving into a new apartment this week, and God, that's got to have all kinds of stress, and so would you just help that all to kind of work out? And then maybe you're praying and you go, shoot, I'm praying for this, maybe I should help her move. So be careful if you start praying. Like I said, it might change your heart. Because what the next step is, you're going to see that person. You're going to see them for who they are, and you're going to see what you don't see. You're going to start wondering about them. You're going to start caring about their life and things that are going on. And you're going to say, does she have help moving? I don't know. I never thought of that. I haven't considered it. I haven't even asked. And it only happens when you come before them and you consider them, you lift them up to God. And God will not just change your heart, not just help you to really see them and see opportunities to initiate friendship, but I really believe this, that God will supernaturally open up opportunities for you to love them. God will supernaturally, when you have lifted people up and pray, open up windows of space and time for you to be there in their life and encourage them and help them. And God, if you're operating in His Holy Spirit in prayer, He will give you wisdom and insight to see and befriend them the way that He sees and befriends them. That there will be divine appointments. And you'll experience things like that one time when I was praying for a friend who I knew was sick. And I stopped and I prayed for her, and I just was going, God, man, I want you to heal her. And there in the quietness of my time in prayer, I felt this deep within my heart, you need to call her. And I was like, I don't really have time to call her. I was hoping we could just get this prayer done and move on. But I felt it deep in my soul. You have to call her. And I was like, no, you have to call her. And I was like, I'm going to drive. It's illegal. I don't have head. Call her. So, okay, I've done this thought while I'm praying, and call. Hey, I don't really know why I'm calling, except for that I was praying for you, and I know you're sick, and I just thought I should tell you. And then on the other end of the line, tears. I'm sitting outside the clinic right now. I'm about to go find out all my results. And I've just been here crying, too afraid to go in. Will you pray with me? Yeah, I could do that. Good. And then pray with her. And God does things like that. God moves you into people's life and helps you to minister to their needs and to be there for the times when they need you most. When you've stopped and you said, okay, I've identified that you're in my life for a reason, that I'm here to serve you. And And I've decided that I'm going to initiate and sometimes make that phone call even when that feels uncomfortable or awkward to me. And I've prayed, and I'm allowing God to be the one to guide this. And that's the kind of thing that Jesus does for us in his church, in the world. And the world, the community we live in, is dying for, is longing for, is hoping beyond hope that we can find meaningful relationships, love and intimacy and care and concern and service and compassion, friendship and forgiveness. And God's design for that love to enter the world is you. To pursue in the way that Jesus has pursued. Would you join me in prayer? God, thank you for coming to us when we were not even looking for you. Thank you for the myriad ways you've entered our stories. God, we love you. We need you. Help us to be those kinds of friends. God, would you put specific individuals in our mind and our heart this morning that you're telling us to love, that you're telling us to serve? Would you show us how to be your hands and feet to those friends in our world, in our community? Would you give us great wisdom to know how to love and how to care? God, may there be people who have us on their hearts. God, I pray that everyone in this room could know the feeling of the value that you see in them, the care you have for them. Pursue us, God. Help us to pursue others. I ask this in Jesus' name.